Firebase or Supabase? Which should you use for your backend as well as database? I understand sometimes it can be tough for you to make a decision on what to use for your backend as well as your database. That is why I'm making this video. And if you have been following, you discover I've made 2 previous videos that extensively talk about Firebase and the dashboard as well as Supabase and how to navigate through the dashboard. So this video particularly is going to explore some of the factors you need to consider before you choose what to use for your application. Okay. And I also want to state and make you know that I have built applications using these 2 platforms here. I built this remotely dev website. The backend was built with Firebase for the backend as well as the database. And I built this pharmacy management system using Supabase for the backend and the database. So I'm going to be sharing my experience with you, and in the process, I'm going to make you understand the factors you need to consider before you choose the language to use for your backend and database. Some of the factors we are going to be considering as we compare between Firebase and Supabase are 1. Hosting, 2. Database used, 3. Learning curve / user experience, 4. User control as well as use cases. Okay, now let's look at the first one, which is hosting. For Firebase actually gives you the opportunity to host, to have your backend, your database, as well as your hosting all in one place, which is a very interesting thing because you can host your static website, your website built with React, Vue, Angular, or your progressive web application all in one place. That's because for hosting, Firebase gives you the opportunity to host right on the platform. Now, let's look at Supabase. For Supabase do not have an in-app hosting feature in the platform. Okay, so what happened is that for Supabase, you can self-host your application. You can host on platforms such as Netlify, Vercel, and other platforms. Okay, so in essence, for hosting, Firebase gives you opportunity to have your backend, your database, as well as your hosting all in one place. 2. Let's look at database used. For your Supabase use relational database, which is SQL and PostgreSQL. So you have SQL editor right in the dashboard for Supabase. All right. And again, you are going to have auto-generated PostgreSQL and API, GraphQL API for your Supabase. That is because it's working with relational data. So what I'm saying in essence is that if you are a developer that is familiar with SQL or PostgreSQL, then a Supabase is going to feel natural. It's going to come naturally to you and you are going to enjoy it more. Now, let's look at, on the other hand, Firebase for database usage. For Firebase, what we have is that it uses non-relational database, which is the NoSQL. All right. Though it is fast, it have real-time data syncage, then it have speed, but it uses non-relational or structured database. Those works better for your Firebase application. Now, let's quickly look at the third feature, which is learning curve and developer experience. First, for Firebase, it has a lower learning curve, okay? And it have a huge community. Really gets the user interface quite intuitive. If you check it out, a lot of AI here and there, because Firebase has Gemini AI intrinsically embedded into the dashboard. That's because it is owned by Google. So it has a less steep learning curve. Now let's talk about Supabase. What about Supabase? Supabase have a higher learning curve when compared to Firebase. And again, you have to keep at the back of your mind that it is majorly for developers who have some foundation about, because there are SQL dashboards, so they have some basis working with SQL database as well as PostgreSQL. They feel more comfortable. I'm not trying to say that if you are not good at that, you cannot work with that, but they feel more intuitive when they work with Supabase. What I'm trying to say in essence is that Firebase, lower learning curve, but you have lesser customization. Supabase, you have a little higher learning curve, but it has more power. That's because you have opportunity to customize a lot of stuff. And again, you are working with raw SQL, which is the PostgreSQL. Now let's look at the fourth feature, which is control. Okay. First, let's look at Firebase. Firebase is owned by Google. All right. That means that when you are working with Firebase, you have to keep in mind that you are logged into Google Cloud. And again, because you are working in Google Cloud, database is going to be on the Google ecosystem. That's just what it means. That means your data will be stored on Google ecosystem because it is owned and maintained by Google. So you have less control when you are working with Firebase. Now let's look at Supabase. For Supabase, it is open source, right? You have intrinsic control of your application or what you are building, and you can host on any platform of your choice, which is not true for Firebase. So for Supabase, you have more control of your application. You can self-host anywhere. But for Firebase, it's a proprietary app because it's owned and maintained by Google. You have to host the application right on from the dashboard. All right. So that is the difference. So lastly, let's look at use cases. Okay, applications, types, and the best platform you can use for them. Okay, first, if you are building SaaS admin dashboard or SaaS project, then it is advisable for you to use Supabase. If you are building chats or chatbots or application that use real-time applications, then it is advisable for you to use Firebase. Then the next one is if you are building MVP, which is minimum viable product, or you are working on hackathon project, then it is advisable you use Firebase because you just quickly need to structure out something. Again, if you are working on SQL heavy project that use basically more of SQL, then you should use Supabase. If you are working on application which care more about privacy, which is privacy sensitive, then it is advisable that you use Supabase. But if what you need currently is you need to want to track analytics, monitoring, and performance, then it is advisable you use Firebase. That brings us to the end of this video. Kindly like, subscribe to the channel. I hope you got value from the video. Thank you. I'll see you right in the next video.